Thank you so much for speaking to me. First of all, this wow is just one of the words that I have, one of many words. The ending is so incredible, and also it's so important in terms of the messages that it's saying. The What I wanted to know is that ending of, in order to assimilate, you're killing off parts of yourself. Um, what that to me was just very powerful. But I wanted to know what your take was when you first kind of understood what they was doing with this season.
Yeah, I think that one thing that immediately struck everybody about the ending was that it was different from the book.
Right.
Or at least different than how the book read on the page. I always kind of read the book and thought that this would be the beginning of the next the next book, like Nella makes this choice, but it turns out that she has different motives. And talking to your point about like killing off parts of yourself in order to assimilate, I took the ending to mean it's just a different type of sacrifice. Nella has been sacrificing parts of herself for years at this company, and it hasn't been bearing any fruit. So she kind of takes matters into her own hands, and she's like, well, maybe I'll just sacrifice a different part of myself in order to move forward and hopefully do some healing eventually. But that was my interpretation. I loved the changes that they made to the ending.
Right. You know.
I'm not sure that I could really add to that.
Okay, man. What's really interesting for Ashleigh, as Hazel May, we don't know whether or not the character is a villain or is trying to help. Can you talk about playing between those gray areas? Because we don't know how exactly to take this character.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't really sure what direction Hazel was going to go as we were shooting the show. And very early on, I I was actually talking to one of our showrunners, Jordan. I remember going up to her, and I didn't realize that she was sharing this story as she was helping promote the show. That I went up to her maybe about 3 episodes in and said to her, I think Hazel wants to be Nella's friend. And that is not quite the same feeling you get when you read the book. But there was something about the writing on the page that they had brought for the series. And I think also innately the way in which I felt connected to Nella as Hazel, I felt like there had to be more of a reason why this character was going to make the choices that she made. It felt like it needed to be far more deeply rooted than just, self-service. So approaching Hazel in those moments when I could see that Nella was breaking through to her in a way that no one else had, I would lean into it and let Hazel enjoy being seen and not always having to be on in the way that we are often always on. But then when another situation would appear where she'd have to switch back out of that and remember who she is and what she's doing, that was a little bit more difficult. And I feel like, I don't know if people could see the difficulty in that, but that's kind of how I navigated the storytelling with her.
All right. What I wanted to know initially from Brittany as Michaela, there we reached this from the very beginning. They butt heads. You do not trust Hazel May at all, and I was wondering, more as Nella ends up liking her, and they end up working together, and it seems successful, and it is successful. Is that more of a innate distrust, or is it somewhat a little bit webbed in jealousy?
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely think it's a little bit of both. I think, we don't get to see a lot of, you know, Malika's personal life, but I definitely do think that Nella is her person. Um, and to see her be so trusting of this stranger who has clearly shown, you know, several red flags, I think, you know, sets off red alerts in Malika as well. And I think Malika also has a little bit of insecurity just about Nella's sort of professional life and what that can bring her. And I don't think they necessarily have the same aspirations. So when Nella gets close to people in the professional space that Nella maybe feels like can relate to her more, you know, I think that makes Malika feel a little bit isolated. So I do think there's a little bit of um jealousy, I guess, but just missing her friend, I think. In addition to, I think Malika's also just very intuitive, and she can just kind of read the writing on the wall that Nella clearly is blind to. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Right. So one of the things that's really interesting to talk about the very ending of Sinclair with Nella, she got, in a way, almost everything that she wanted, but of course it cost a price. But it was always costing a price, no matter what, being at Wagner. So I was interested at the end where you do take the phone call at the burner, and it seems like you're working your way from the inside out in order to destroy the other Black girls group. Is taking down this group more harmful than it is good? Because in a way, in the society, you still have to give part of your soul in order to achieve what it is that you want.
Yeah, I think one of the discourses that's been circulating around since the show has come out has been people kind of jokingly, but with a tinge of seriousness, are like, well, I mean, it wouldn't be that bad to take the grease, right? Like it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And I think part of the reason why it's such an engaging show is because that's a very real perspective. Like there are people who, myself included, like we all do versions of that all the time just to get through the day. So there's shame, but there's also courage in, you know, taking the quote unquote easier route. I think I've thought a lot about it, and I don't know for sure, but I think the next step of her journey would be a very morally complicated one, because is going to ultimately be targeting a group of Black women, but how she does it, I think, will reveal a lot about the kind of person she is.
What's interesting, what I wanted to know from Ashleigh with Hazel May, did you ever dive into who Hazel May was before the Grease?
Sorry about that. You said, did I ever dive into Hazel May before she took the grease?
Yes.
Me personally, no, I didn't. I wasn't really thinking about who she was before she became who she is. And I think that curiosity was piqued very strongly through the process of the show and watching the way in which our storytelling was progressing. And it allowed the writers to decide to put that question down on a page and flesh out who she was. And I mean, I guess I can say that there were probably a couple of times where, like, there's a scene about where Nella says she wants to give the proceeds to Young Black and Lit, and there was small discussion around, what does that mean to her? Does it actually mean something to her? Was that something that maybe she was a part of? You know, why is it such a special thing? Why is it so impactful? And I believe after that moment, that's when more of the curiosity built, but I didn't have it going in. I just wanted to take this opportunity by the reins and see where it was going to go. But I'm very I'm very thankful that we got the chance to uncover the many faces of Hazel.
That it's kind of for all three.
What'd you say?
When look, no, I know. I was saying a question for all three of you is looking back at what's going on now, especially if there's season 2. Is Diana kind of viewed as more of the victim or a villain?
Oh, you got the good questions today.
I know. I think that maybe, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that much like Hazel, you're led to believe something, but it can always change. New information can always change how you feel about a person. So if we had the equivalent of a backstory episode of Diana's personal life, when she and Kendra Ray kind of stopped talking, maybe it was very lonely for her. Maybe she felt like she didn't have a lot of choices. Maybe she fell under the spell of a company. I don't know. And I think it'll be up to everybody to decide if you think that makes somebody a villain or not.
You know, I was having this conversation, and I and it's that empathy thing in me. I always want to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, unless there is very clear, which even as I say this, it'll be like, girl, what you talking about? Unless there's very clear evidence intuitively that something ain't right. I look at Diana as a victim of circumstance, similarly to the way that I look at Hazel. It doesn't absolve them of the choices that they made, but it's very interesting how a person would behave if they're in one situation that makes them feel like they're drowning, and then all of a sudden somebody shows up with a handout to pull them out of the water. And you don't really know what the land looks like, but it's a lot less tiresome than trying to stay afloat. So it's a very interesting, it's an interesting question. I don't know that there is a one right answer for it. But then there are people who are like, nope, she's a villain. I don't want to hear it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And kind of lastly, going off with season 2, what would you like to see with your characters?
I'd like to see, I definitely want to see more. I want to see like Nella and Malika's friendship origin. I think that is every scenario that I can imagine is hilarious. So I think that would be really great. I know that they cut a scene from season 1 that would have explained that. So I think that would be a really funny thing to see.
Agreed.
Also, Nella struggling to like perform this confidence, I think could be very funny.
Struggling. What?
She'd be like, I can't do all this hair, this inches. What do I do with it all?
Malika got you. She's got you. I think I am interested in seeing the dynamic between Malika and Kendra Ray. Because it was a little bit tense. And I think they have very different energies. So if Nella is going along with this sort of ploy to take the company down from the inside out, and Malika and Kendra are working together on that, I'm just curious to see what that dynamic would unfold, how it would unfold.
I think I would like to see, honestly, around all of those things, because Hazel is just kind of, there are some things that she controls, but there's a lot that she really doesn't. And if there are other things going on to maybe subvert her reality, I'd be curious to see how the pressure being applied back onto her when she thought that she would be free from having to run. What would she do in that moment, especially if she really wants to try to build a sincere relationship with Nella. Like, how far would Nella go to fan that flame just to maintain, you know, the proximity to be able to do what she needs to do? And how would that manifest between Malika and Hazel? Could there be a shift there? I wonder if, like, what happens if Malika accidentally takes the grease? Like, I would be very curious to see in what ways would Hazel really start to crack based on all of these different things that everyone else is undergoing in a second season.
Wonderful. Thank you all for speaking to me. This is a very deep and important show. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.